For thousands of years, we've been under the impression the Bible was meant to be taken seriously. Finally, a new translation that'll change all that. This is Oh My God, What the Fuck Bible.
Reach out, touch faith.
Welcome to Season 4, Episode 6 of Oh My God, What the Fuck Bible with me, David Tuckman, coming to you from my house. Each week on the show, a guest joins me and tries to read a whole big chunk of my own personal translation of the Hebrew Bible while I make fun of it. And this time, we're reading a portion known in Hebrew as chukat and in English as, well, you'll see. But before we get into the show, I have an announcement. If you've been bummed about all these pre-recorded shows and you're in New York or plan to be in New York very soon, I've got good news. The Season 4 finale will be recorded live. Join me Saturday night, July 14th at 9:30 p.m. as we close out Season 4. We'll be recording at Anyone Comics in Brooklyn. That's 1216 Union Street in Crown Heights, and I can't wait to see you there. Back to the episode. I wanted to welcome to the show Ahron Moeller.
Hi.
Welcome to the show, Ahron. Ahron is he is a photographer. He is an artist. He he's listing them off and making sure I'm getting them right. Am I missing anything?
I'll go with artist and photographer.
Artist and photographer.
But I'm really a journalist. That's how I got into photography in the first place.
Very cool.
And the Bible.
And he has some really beautiful imagery that's on Instagram right now. He's been having some shows here in New York and around the New York area. But I wanted to talk to him about religion. So tell me a little bit about your religious background.
Love religion. I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and the Bible in specific, because I've been asked to read the Torah.
Yeah.
Which is the Bible in Hebrew. Mm-hmm. Since probably the fall of this year. So I've been reading like the Hebrew in the Charles Street Synagogue since Parshat Lech Lecha.
Right.
You've been following this like narrative. So like what I'm focusing on in my religious practice right now is really this story of how everything, how the Israelites kind of like move towards their promised land, which is, I don't want to give any spoilers away for this week so far, but that's the idea. But yeah, I've been focusing on ritual and, I grew up pretty Orthodox, and I've been finally like getting I think reading the Torah has really been reminded me a lot of like what this is all about.
Yeah, it's been an interesting experience for me too. Going back to it and kind of, it really is in a way the performative reading of it that makes me experience it in a very different way. Similar to what you're experiencing, I think, where I'm not just reading it, I'm reinterpreting it and learning what it means to me. And I don't know if you're experiencing something like that as well, reading it in front of other people.
Well, reading it without any commentary whatsoever has really been really helpful, because I think what I like about this is that you bring in your own commentary. And I think you're like a modern sage. Why not?
Why not? Yeah.
So often growing up as a child, I was they would force feed the commentary to us, and it shapes the narrative totally different. And by the time you're an adult, you're like, wait a minute, these stories, half of them are just myths and parables, or called medrash, right? Mm-hmm. So I like that you're taking a fresh look at it and interpreting it how you see it today. So that's what I've been learning from just by reading the literal text without any commentary. So it's refreshing to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's come to me too. It's how just seeing the difference between what I remember being taught this means and what it actually means if I just read it is a very wide berth. That makes me think of one of the phrases that comes up in your Instagrams a lot. Be your own muse.
I never connected that to the Parsha. Yeah. But let's see how that can be biblical. Yeah, I'd like that to be biblical. Was Moshe his own muse? I think he was, up on the mountain all by himself.
He may have been, yeah.
So long, no one helping him out. He might have been the first muse.
Yeah.
He might have been the first be your own muse.
He was your first BYOM.
Maybe Abraham.
I think Abraham was, yeah.
It was the first Parsha I started reading was Lech Lecha, and I realized he was all on his own, and maybe that had some subtext. He was really alone. Mm-hmm. The first monotheist.
Yeah, the be your own monotheism.
Do I say that a lot? Be your own muse?
Be your own muse. It's one of the motifs that comes up a lot. I don't want to make you self-conscious about it because I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, only on the weekends, obviously. I can't be my own muse, but I try. In the weekdays, I'm sort of.
So you've been reading this, and I'm sure you have some familiarity with the stories from your upbringing. Is there, and this is something that I ask everybody, but is there a particular story or a character that you're drawn to, or that stands out for you?
In this week's reading,
Or no, in all of it, in the
all of it.
entirety of.
I mean, I like
Tanakh.
Abraham. You know, I like Abraham.
think that
Lech
lines
Lecha was
up.
the first the parsha that I learned as a child.
Mm-hmm.
They started us. They didn't want to teach us the creation story or the flood story. That's
Really?
too controversial. They started us off with Lech Lecha, the first, Abraham, the first monotheist. I think they wanted to start there. And interestingly enough, that's when I started reading the Torah. Was also from that point.
Yeah.
So I kind of like, as an adult, reimagining the whole thing, literally without any commentary. It's been helpful. We're not. I haven't gone through the entire thing yet, but I like the character of Abraham a lot because he has a lot of tests and trials.
Yeah.
No, really, I like that. He's alone in the world. He doesn't get any validation from any of his colleagues at the time, and he really is alone in the world. And I think of him as the first real religious person.
Yeah.
He sacrifices everything for his religion, and I think he's the role model for me, and I think he's the role model for many characters that come after him in the story.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have the basis off of. So I think he's pretty profound. It's just him and God for most of the story. You
Yeah.
know,
And him really being prepared to give up everything for what he believes in.
it seems like he has no choice. It's like he gives up everything. Yeah, he really personifies like sacrifices. I like that. I think he's my favorite character. In all the story.
Mm-hmm. How do you conceive of yourself as a religious person now? You are reading the Torah every week in shul, in a service, and you're engaged in ritual. Would you, some people like to label themselves, some people really like to avoid labels. Do you feel like that's something that you can pin yourself down on?
That's an interesting question. So I don't like to label myself, but I think that sometimes the community around you likes to label the community that they've found or have made. It's like, for example, the president of the synagogue asked me a couple of weeks ago, he's like, please, we don't want anyone to think that you're driving here on Saturday morning. So can you just we have a small cot. Can you just sleep over and avoid any of these doubts that we might have that you're taking transfer. They want me so badly to be
right
as orthodox as the community is. So there's technical things now, that we live in a modern world, that it's interesting. So I don't like labels. Yeah. And I think that I don't define myself by a community either. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like Abraham, because he was on his own and he found his own Judaic practices, his own, he predates what we call Judaism today anyhow. So I don't even want to call it Judaism. I like to think of myself as a spiritualist. Mm-hmm. It's very cliche now because yoga is very popular. I don't mean it in the yoga sense. As much as I like all ritual practices and Eastern practices, I don't I don't pick one. I just think I fit in what works for me and in my own growth as a person. I like to tie that in.
Well, one last question: do you believe in God?
God as the long white beard, Santa Claus?
However you want to define it.
I don't know. That's a really interesting question. Oh, I thought that there was some that was presumed if I'm doing a OMG, because there's God in the OMG part of the title of this show.
But it's almost in a phrase, right?
So you're asking me, when you say OMG, WTF, Bible, what does the G mean for me? You're saying, oh, okay, fine. I think the G is this unknown, unfathomable entity that's bigger than all of us. Put it this way. Yeah. There's something out there that I don't comprehend. I don't know if I don't like to personify it whatsoever, but I think there's something out there that we just cannot understand, and there's a sense of you have to put your suspense in, and out there. Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready to read the Bible?
Yeah, always ready.
Right. So this is Torah, a loose translation, Book 4, In the Desert, Episode 6, Decrees, Chapter 39, in which there are some mad cow rules. This is Numbers 19:1 to 19:22.
This is going to be fun. Mad cow rules. As in mad, as in many?
As in insane.
Yeah. These
Yes.
are the decrees Jehovah has commanded you. Jehovah said to Moshe.
So the word that's used here is decrees, and this is what you're talking about commentary that's added on later. It's a pretty crazy rule what's about to be read, and the word in Hebrew is chok, which is different from the word mitzvah, which means commandment, and that means that this is something that God has commanded and cannot be challenged. And there is a commentary that God used the word chok or decree so that Satan and other nations wouldn't laugh at the sons of Israel for these rules. And let's see if it works.
Okay. Tell the sons of Israel to take a pure, unblemished red cow that has never worn a yoke. Bring it to Eleazar the Kohen. He'll take it out of the camp and slaughter it there. Then he'll stick his finger in its blood and spray it on the front of the entrance to the tent of witnessing 7 times. Someone will burn the cow in front of him. Its skin and meat will be burnt on its shit. The Kohen will take cedar, hyssop, and crimson thread and throw them into the burning cow. Then this is in quotes. The Kohen will clean his clothing and his blood and his body in water.
Because he'll be very dirty from this very, very dirty activity.
After, he'll come to the camp. He is yucky until evening.
Yes.
The burner will also clean his clothes and himself in water and be yucky until evening. A clean man will collect the ashes of the cow and put it outside the camp for safekeeping. These ashes are for special water that you can sprinkle on things to make them clean. The collector will clean his clothes and be yucky until the evening. This will be an eternal decree to the sons of Israel and stranger who lives within them.
Very, very, very internal. So you're taking this cow, burning every single piece of it or burning most of it, turning it into ashes, and then that will clean people. So it's a little bit of a bizarre rule.
I mean, it sounds sterile.
Yeah.
Anyone who touches a dead body is yucky for 7 days. If he purifies himself on the 3rd and 7th day, he'll become clean. Anyone who touches a dead body doesn't clean himself and then makes Jehovah's sanctuary yucky, his soul is cut off from Israel because you didn't sprinkle the water of cleaning on him. He's still yucky. If someone dies in the tent, boy, have I got rules for that. Everyone who comes to the tent is yucky for 7 days. Any open vessel that wasn't tightly covered is yucky. Anyone who in an open field touches someone killed by a sword, a dead person, a human bone, or a grave is yucky for 7 days. They will take some burnt cow ashes and mix it in a vessel with fresh water. A pure man will dip hyssop in the water and sprinkle it on the tent. All the vessels, all the people who were there, and the man who touched a bone or a corpse or a dead body or a grave. The clean man will sprinkle the yucky stuff 7 times on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. He'll be clean on the 7th day and clean his clothes and clean himself and become clean in evening.
You can see why the sages at some point wanted to sort of caveat this with being like this is something that we don't understand, even when God says it.
Do the commentaries have a hard time with this parsha?
This is where that commentary that I read earlier this is one of those rules where it's a chok, so it can never be understood, and we can never challenge it or change it because it's too strange.
It's challenging because so many of the sages are always trying to understand what the words mean, even non-literal. So even the non-literal, we don't know that. Oh wow, this is a really shrouded in mystery. This one.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be still be reading.
If
someone gets yucky, if someone
does
doesn't get yucky, okay. So this is the whole section. If someone gets yucky and doesn't purify, his soul is cut off from the congregation because he made Jehovah's sanctuary yucky. The sprinkling, purifying water wasn't thrown on him, so he's yucky. This will be an eternal decree for you. The sprinkler of the cleaning water will wash his clothes and be yucky until night. Anyone who touches the yucky man will be yucky, and the person who touched him will be yucky until night.
So, there are a lot of Jews out there and some Christian evangelicals who yearn for a return to the days of the temple, obviously, and believe that one of the greatest impediments to that is the lack of these pure red cows. You might not be aware of this. These people are trying to find one and believe that when the red cow appears, then it will usher in the age of the 3rd temple, because we can't actually prepare anybody to bring sacrifices unless we have one of these pure red cows that we can burn, turn into ashes, and then use in water to purify people. So there are people who are actually trying to breed these red cows.
So over the centuries, there are people that have maybe spotted a cow that's sort of red, never got it 100%.
And they always find something wrong with it.
It's got to be without blemish.
Yes, without blemish. Like if you go to, let's say, yeshivaworldnews.com, every once in a while there's a story about a red cow that has been born somewhere, and invariably they always find some blemish or some problem with it too.
I'm sorry, I didn't do my research on Yeshiva World.
No, it's okay. That's chapter 39. This is chapter 40, in which a character dies, a very important character for this week, and there's a fight over water. Numbers 21 to 2013.
The whole crew got to the desert of Sin in the first month. They settled in Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried there. There was no water, so the people organized against Moshe and Aaron. They fought with Moshe. Why couldn't we die like the others did, they said. Why did you bring us and our cattle out to die in the desert?
It's weird that they're so concerned about the cattle.
It's very cow-centric, this week's portion. It's the red cow. Even the cow's shit gets a mention.
Mm-hmm. Got him.
And the Torah doesn't waste words.
No, it doesn't.
That's a whole other section. Like I think cow shit is actually very sacred, theogenically speaking, because they very often that's how they find the psychedelic mushrooms.
Yeah.
That's another topic. But I think the Torah makes mention of it for
there must be a
mystical reasons. Why did you take us out of Mitzrayim to bring us to this bad place? I like that you use Mitzrayim and you spell that out rather than Egypt, because there's a lot of connotations in the word, in that Hebrew of the word Mitzrayim. It's not literally Egypt. So I don't know if you did that intentionally.
Yes.
So why did you take us out of Mitzrayim to bring us to this bad place? This is not a place of seeds or fig or grapes or pomegranates or water to drink.
By the way, a place of seeds is totally the name of a place of seeds is totally the name of a nursery in iguanas. It has to be, right?
There are some nurseries in iguanas.
Yes,
there are. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting. I guess like a fertile land.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fertile land. Moshe and Aaron backed off and fell on their face. This is in front of the tent of the witnessing. They saw the horror of Yehovah, their Elohim. Take your stick, Yehovah said to Moshe, and get the whole phalanx.
Everyone has trouble with that word. There are only so many different ways to talk about all of B'nai Israel,
Did I pronounce that right?
Phalanx is correct, yes.
And your brother Aaron, talk to the rock in front of them. It'll give you its water. You'll take the water out of the stone and give it to the crew and their cattle to drink. Moshe took the stick, like Yehovah commanded. Moshe and Aaron gathered the congregation in front of the stone.
So you might be wondering how it's possible for, 1 point something million people, because we don't count the women, to gather in front of a stone. So the commentators say that this is one of those places in the world where it's a very small place that can just somehow fit a lot of people. Those places.
It was a mountain?
It was one of those places. One of those miracle places.
I like when you say the commentators.
The commentators. I think that one was a midrash.
Listen up, Dix.
The sages.
Listen up, Dix, Moshe said. I'm going to get water from this stone for you. Moshe hit the stone with his stick twice. A shit ton of water came out on the phalanx, and their cattle drank. You didn't believe me, Yehovah said to Moshe and Aaron. You made me look bad in front of everybody. As punishment, you won't get to bring these people to the land I will give to them.
That is a harsh punishment just for hitting a rock instead of talking to it. But that's hard.
Yeah, I feel like this is Moshe gets harsh the most of any character in this story.
Like
you gotta have faith.
You gotta have faith. But I mean, the people get kicked out of the land or don't get to go to the land because they believe the spies that there were monsters and rock people there, and Moshe just should have talked to a rock. Oh well.
I guess I feel bad for Moshe in a sense, but also it's like a bittersweet story. He doesn't get to the promised land.
Yeah, it's dramatic.
These are the waters of Meribah, where the sons of Israel fought Yehovah, and he was holy in them.
Yes, but honestly, they kind of fought with him everywhere they went. That's chapter 40. Chapter 41, in which there's a family reunion, sort of. Numbers 2014 to 2021.
I think Yisrael means to fight with God.
It does,
right?
yes, exactly.
To struggle with God.
You
use the word Yisrael. I like that you use the word Mitzrayim and Yisrael. Those
Thank
are
you.
those are loaded words.
I think it's important to use the real Hebrew instead of the like anglicized version of it.
I always say
otherwise we get
Israelites,
away-
but that doesn't sound right either.
No, it's really when they're. I try to be a little bit careful. It's the sons of Yisrael when they're in the desert, and then at a certain point they become. Well, we'll see when I get to it, but they're the sons of Yisrael. They're not the Israelites, and then they take on the name of Judah eventually and become Jews. Anyway,
This is a good history lesson.
but then also like a note about Jehovah. I think it's very important to use the actual word or the name of God that's used in the Bible instead of just translating it as God, because they might be distinct characters.
Like two?
Yeah, it
Different.
might be Jehovah and Elohim. It might be different names for something, but it's important to actually render it properly instead of just saying that it's God, because the word God isn't technically used in this. There are different names for some deity that are used in this.
Elohim.
Yeah,
And-
Jehovah, El.
Right, a few different ones.
41, in which there's a family reunion, sort of, Numbers 2014 to 2021. Go ahead.
Moshe sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Your brother Israel says, you know all the troubles we've found.
So you probably remember that Edom is the other name for Esav, who was the brother of Yaakov, which was the other name for Israel. The Bible is confusing sometimes with all these names.
Our fathers went down to Mitzrayim for a long ass time. Mitzrayim was shitty to them, so we called out to Jehovah, who heard our voices, and he sent a messenger and took us out of Mitzrayim. Now we're in Kadesh, a city within your borders. Let us pass through your land. We won't pass through any fields or vineyards or even drink from any of your wells. We'll go on the king's way. We won't turn left or right until we've left your borders. Don't you dare come through here, Edom said to him, or I will come out with the sword to meet you. We'll take the high road, the sons of Israel said to him. If anyone, even cattle, drinks your water, we'll pay the price. It's no big deal. Let us walk through. You shall not pass, he said. Edom came out to meet him with a heavy nation and a strong hand. That's how Edom refused to let Israel pass through its borders. Israel turned away from him.
That's chapter 41. Chapter 42, in which a major character, particularly appropriate for this week, dies. Numbers 20, 22 to 20, 29.
The sons of Israel left Kadesh and came to Hor, the mountain.
Please don't slut shame the mountain, Ahron.
Har.
Hor har.
Har, the mountain. That's a...
It's Hor har.
Oh,
no,
God.
it means something.
Aharon will be gathered to his nation.
Yeah.
Jehovah said to Moshe and Aaron at Hor, the mountain, near the border of Edom. Because, this is definitely going to be a new motif to work with. Aaron dies on Hor, the mountain. I like this a lot. Oh, sorry. Okay. Aaron will be gathered. I thought that you picked this because you knew that this is the when the character Aaron dies, but this is coincidental. I like that.
This is, yes, it sort of just lined up this way.
It's hard for me to read this part. It's like writing my own eulogy.
Yeah.
Okay. Aaron will be gathered to his nation, Jehovah said to Moshe and Aaron at Hor the mountain near the border of Edom, because he is definitely not going to the land I will give to the sons of Israel, because you rebelled against my mouth at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar up Hor the mountain. Strip Aaron of his clothing and dress his son Eleazar in them. Aaron will be gathered and die there. Moshe did what Jehovah commanded. They went up Har the mountain in the front of the whole nation. Moshe stripped off Aaron's clothing and dressed Eleazar his son. Aaron died there atop the mountain. Moshe and Eleazar came down the mountain. The whole nation saw that Aaron was gone. They cried over Aaron 30 days, the whole house of Israel.
So that's the 30 days of mourning that Jews
Is that what we learned?
typically do. This is one
Is
of
the
the
first source?
I think the first source is actually Yaakov mourning over Yosef.
30 days?
I might mention 30 days there too, but this is the second one.
You'll have to go back in your WTF OMG.
I'll have to go back to an earlier episode,
Yeah.
season 1. That's chapter 42. Chapter 43, in which there's an extremely brief fight. Numbers 21:1 to 21:3.
The Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the south, heard that Israel came the way of Ataris.
The Ataris.
Is that like a band reference? Like an indie rock band reference? Or
That's
just the
video game.
The video game?
Yeah.
Nice. He fought with Israel and took captives. Israel swore a vow to Jehovah. If you give this nation to us, we will destroy its cities, they said. Yehovah heard the voice of Yisrael and gave them the Canaani. Yisrael destroyed the Canaani cities. They called that place Charma?
Charma. Yeah, which means destruction, which is a very cool name for a place. I would definitely live in destruction. That's chapter 43. Chapter 44, in which it kind of seems like this isn't really in the Bible. Numbers 21:4 to 21:19.
They traveled from Hor the mountain by way of the Reed Sea around the land of Edom and got very impatient along the way.
By the way, at this point, all the people, so apparently 38 years have passed, and all the people who were punished to die before they reached the land during the whole spy thing earlier in this book are dead by now.
Where are you reading? This is your
this
commentary?
Is commentary? No, this is commentary. That supposedly by now somehow 38 years have passed. Nobody's mentioned anything, but all those people are dead.
So between chapters 43 and 44.
No. Like probably earlier, because by the time they get to Memariva, where he hits the rock, it's happened. But this is when Rashi just decides to tell us.
I like how you just put random Rashis in to fill in the gaps. I specifically didn't look at any commentary at all before I looked at this, just so I wanted to be clear.
Yes. I look for the Rashis that make things most confusing and most fun, I think.
Nice.
That stand out as strangest to me.
So this podcast you include a lot of Rashi?
I include some Rashi, the weirdest Rashi. There's a lot of Rashi.
They traveled from Hor the mountain by the way of the Reed Sea around the land of Edom and got very impatient along the way. Why did you take us out of Mitzrayim to die in the desert? The nation said to Elohim and Moshe, there's no bread, no water, and we can't freaking stand this crappy excuse for bread.
Spoiler alert, if you've been following along, whenever anybody complains, they're going to get killed by God.
I feel like they should know this by now.
Right? Well, maybe that's
stop
why.
Complaining.
Maybe that's why Rashi jumps in and is like, by the way, all those people who have learned God's patterns, they're dead by now, so that's why they're doing it again.
Yeah, Rashi's pretty logical.
Yeah.
So God hates complainers.
God
hates complainers.
Whining.
He hates whiners. The bread it's like bad bread.
Yeah,
it says
they
it's
hate
like
the
spoiled
fact that
bread or something.
They don't.
It's like basically beer.
Yeah, it tastes like coriander, like green coriander.
Yehovah sent fire snakes that bit everyone, and a whole lot of Israel died. The nation rushed to Moshe. We sinned, they said. We spoke against you and Yehovah. Pray to Yehovah and take the snakes away from us. Moshe prayed for the nation. Make a fire, Yehovah said to Moshe, and put it on a miracle.
So maybe that means pole. The word in Hebrew is nes, which means miracle. Nes gadol haya po, which is what's on the dreidel. A great miracle happened here. So that's one of those things that I had to look up. Supposedly it's a pole or some kind of idol that's created.
Super strange that Yehovah himself is telling the leader to make some kind of graven image.
Yep. This is that's why the chapter is called, in which it really is strange that this isn't here.
It's really hard to take Yehovah seriously if at one point he's like, don't believe in any other gods, and then he's like, no, make a graven image now. And you would think at this point, like, if Moshe would go and do that, Yehovah would be like, no, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to believe in me. Don't do that. So it's really contradictory.
Very.
He already hit the rock, right?
Yes. And there was the whole golden calf thing where he freaked out about a graven image, even just of an animal.
Right. This was on the journey out in the desert, probably not too long before. Yes. Everyone who's been bit will see it and live. Like a snake image.
Yeah.
Moshe made a brass snake and put it on the miracle. And if a snake bit a man and he looked at the brass snake, he lived.
So that's really insane, because it's like, if you look at this graven image that Moshe, I guess, holds up, just by looking on this brass snake, the poison leaves your body. And
See, I like this. I like the visual, where you just by seeing, you get cured. I like that.
Yeah.
They don't have to they don't actually have to touch it or get bit or just to see it.
Yeah. Anyway, that is chapter 44.
Enough is enough! I have had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane!
Chapter 45, in which there is some traveling. Numbers 21:10 to 21:16.
The sons of Israel traveled to Avot and camped there. They left Avot and camped in Aa, Averim, in the desert next to Moab, towards where the sun rises. From there, they traveled to Nahal Zered and camped. From there, they traveled to the other side of the Arnon, which is in the desert outside the border of Amori, and camped there. Because Arnon is around Moab, between Moab and the Amori, this is what the book of Yehovah's Wars said about it. Yehov in Supa and the valleys of Arnon and the slopes of the valleys that incline towards the seat of Ar. These words are funny, right?
Geography lesson is not helpful.
I know, it's a lot of words.
It's a lot of strange places all of a sudden.
And near the border of Moab, from there to Be'er, where Yehovah said to Moshe, gather up the nation and give them water.
Really feel like they could have just put a chart in there, but that's chapter 45. Chapter 46, in which there's a freaking song now. Numbers 21:17 to 21:20.
I like how they break out in song. You know?
Yeah.
They get so.
It's
I like
very,
it. I
very.
think the words are Az Yashir. I think again.
Jerry R. Tolkien. Yeah.
I like it. They sing now. This is the song Yisrael sang. Come up well, answer us. The well was dug by ministers, delved by the masters of the nation with the scepters and the staves from the desert of Matana, from Matana to Nachliel, and from Nachliel, Bamot, from Bamot to the valley in the field of Moab, the top of Pisgah that looks over the wasteland.
What the fuck is
It says
going on
wasteland?
anywhere?
There's a
Yeah,
wasteland?
it does. It's like a word. I can't remember the actual Hebrew.
Different
right
than
now.
the desert? I mean, it's all
It's a
wasteland.
Different. Yeah. I mean, you're right. But I think it may be Midbar, and I think I chose to do wasteland there. But I think there may be a different word. I can check it.
Well, it sounds like a desolate place.
Yes, Midbar is sometimes
Uninhabited. Okay.
Yeah, wasteland. That's chapter 46. Chapter 47, in which there's some slightly more drawn out fighting. Numbers 21:21 to 22:1.
Israel sent messengers to Sichon, the king of the Amori. Let us pass through your land, they said. We won't turn into any field or vineyard. We won't even drink from your wells. We'll go on the king's road. The entire time we're in your borders. Sichon did not let Yisrael through. Instead, Sichon got his whole country together and went out to step to Yisrael in the desert. When they got to Yahatz, they fought with Yisrael. Yisrael smacked them with their sword edge and took their land from Arnon to Yabok. What they took even included the children of Ammon, because the border of the children of Ammon was strong.
As everyone knows.
Yisrael took all of the cities. They settled in all the Amori cities, in Heshbon and all the towns. Because Heshbon is the city of Sichon, the king of Amori, he had fought with the first king of Moab and took all his land until Arnon. This is why the parables say, come to Heshbon, build and establish the city of Sichon. Because of fire... Oh.
Those famous parables about Heshbon and Sichon, the king of the Amori, that we all know and love.
Because a fire went out from Heshbon, a light from within Sichon is devoured, a city of Moab, the masters of the high places of Arnon. Oi, Moab, you've lost, people of Chemosh.
Parables are still going.
We gave his sons as fugitives and his daughters into captivity to the Amori king Sichon. We shot. Heshbon is lost until Devon. Also to Nopach, which goes to Midvah. And these are the chapters that I always skipped over, learning as a kid, because I don't know the geography to me. It's like, there's no map, right? They don't give you a map.
You need, it's really like this, between the songs and all that, you really need J.R.R. Tolkien, like one of those maps in the beginning of the book, so you can be like, oh, okay.
Geographers like
this
passage, because they get to look at the map and pencil it out and see the original spots. I mean, it's all like, we're not talking about many miles.
No, exactly. It's all like just over the border from, it's like basically Jordan, I think. And people like to point to this stuff to justify wanting to expand the borders of Israel and take additional land because, well, they fought for and won it 3,000 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Israel lived in the land of Amori. Moshe sent spies to Yazar. They took its dependents and kicked out the Amoris there. They turned and rose towards Bashan. Og, the king of Bashan, came out to greet them at Adre, with his whole nation ready for war. Don't be afraid of him, Yehovah said to Moshe, because I've given him and his whole nation and his land in your hands, and you'll do him like you did Sichon. They struck him and his sons and his whole nation until none were left, and they took the land.
So they wiped out the entire nation and all the people there. That's fun.
See, hitting a rock is no good, but,
Yeah, but
hitting and killing an entire nation and just leaving them
essentially
desolate is
genocide.
fine.
That's cool.
I like that. The sons of Israel traveled to the plains of Moab on the other side of Yarden at Jericho and camped there.
That is episode 6. That's Sichon, or that's Chukat.
Genocide gets an LOL.
LOL genocide. Thank you so much, Ahron, for reading that. That was awesome.
That was really riveting.
I feel like they've brought up. Well, there's so many different. So many of the parts of the Bible or of the Torah are like collections of anecdotes, and that really was a collection of anecdotes, and random things happen. Now's the part of the show called the Devar Torah, which literally means Torah word. And I was wondering if you can sum up that strange collection of anecdotes into just a single word, if anything comes to mind.
I'd say chok, even though it's like it's in the parsha name, but chok is,
Yeah.
I mean, the strongest thing that stands out in this week's portion before we get into like the map and and the sojourns is really this red cow, which I think is the epitome of what we call a chok,
Yeah.
which is what you call you translated this as decree.
Yes.
Which is different than a mitzvah. A mitzvah is sort of like, oh, we get it. We're doing a nice thing. We're helping somebody cross the street. That's a mitzvah.
Right.
But when you bring a red cow to sanctify yourself from touching a corpse, that's not a mitzvah. That's sort of like, just this is how you do it.
Yeah.
So I think chok would really be the operating word in this week's parsha, chok.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Well, yeah, it's like, it's different. Like the commandment is like, well, God commands you to do this. And you're like, well, that makes sense. God doesn't want me to kill people. God wants me to do this thing. This is more like a decree. It's kind of this seemingly irrational thing that God is just decreeing is the way things are done.
And throughout the parsha, you have this narrative where you can't hit the rock.
Right.
You have to kill the nation.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to eat spoiled bread. And it's just sort of like, this is, there's not really any mitzvahs happening. There's nothing
No.
good. You'll make a pole and you look at it and the snake's venom will miraculously disappear. A lot of really strange, like very seemingly harsh directives in this week's parsha. Kill the nation. And there's no questions. You can't question anything.
Right. Yeah.
You really can't. And even Moshe himself can't question God. He gets in trouble for questioning God. He gets frustrated, at all these like mysteries, and he gets punished because he gets frustrated. He isn't allowed to use a little bit of angst or anger and he just puts it on a rock.
Yeah. You could say that there's a lot of anger in this. Like Moshe is taking out frustration. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of violence in it. But it's almost like, I wonder if you could take chok in a little bit further and have it be about death, because there is a lot of death in this parsha too. You have Miriam and Aaron both dying, both two characters who have been with Moshe. And the parsha ends with Moshe essentially left by himself. And death is one of those things where it almost feels like a chok, a decree, something that doesn't make sense, where it just, God has decided that life has to end, and that has to happen for two people in this parsha this week.
Besides the many that die, I guess, along the way in the desert, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of corpses left in this body. So I guess it's apropos to have it juxtaposed with this sojourn. Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah. Death is kind of like, LOL, like you said, genocide.
Genocide.
It really doesn't. It's not something that we can understand why it has to happen. It just is. It's almost like a decree. It's like, why do we have to live or die or not hit the rock, bring a red cow? So this is like where I think a lot of modern people have trouble with the Bible. It's all these things that they cannot logically explain scientifically. It's really hard for a lot of people to suspend their disbelief and bring a red cow.
Yeah. My word is denouement, or unraveling, or like wrapping up, because, and it's coming from the perspective of somebody who's been translating all of these over the course of the years. And it does feel like in this parsha specifically, taking, like from the perspective of telling this whole story, it's really like things are kind of coming together or setting up for some kind of ending, because the rest of, like, they're really getting into place to end this book. Like the characters are being put in place for the ending of the fourth book of Bamidbar, of In the Desert. And then the last book is really like just the preparation for them going into the land. So it's almost like a lot of plot lines are coming to an end here. Like they're finally engaging in battle and taking over land and preparing themselves to launch, the battles with Yehoshua on the other side of the river. Two major characters die. It's somehow revealed in commentary that that punishment that was meted out a few episodes ago about everybody having to die before they get to the land is happening. The final plot line for Moshe that he can't go into the land is set up, so that it feels like there's a lot of setting up the places for the real finale of the story. That's how I felt reading it, or what my experience was. Do you have any other thoughts? Is there anything that you want to talk about what reading especially the passage about Aaron's death brings up for you?
I think Ahron has a pretty eloquent entourage. They bring him up to the mountain, and I was reading on the commentary that I was reading. It doesn't even use the word died, just an expired.
Yeah,
sort of like old age.
Yeah.
And Mary. So Moshe's sister and brother die in this expulsion. So he's really left alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the nation is really, really frustrated with him. God is frustrated with him. So he's really alone in the desert for the first time. And there's no red cow. I mean, where's he going to find a red cow
Exactly.
in the desert? So he's really hard pressed to find some meaning out of this whole thing. And he's told he can't go, so he's just really stuck in the desert. How frustrating would you be if you were the leader of a people and your allies are dead, your siblings are not there to help you, and Ahron was his spokesperson,
Yeah.
and Miriam was the band leader.
Yeah.
So he's alone. He probably doesn't talk so well, as we've learned earlier. And he's got to do this all alone. I'm sure he was pretty lethargic by this time. It's battle after battle. So I empathize with Moshe at this point. He's just really almost on autopilot now. Just whatever Yehovah says, he's going to have to just go along with it. I never thought of it that way, but he's really alone in this week's parsha.
He is, yeah. It's interesting too, and I know this is a little bit silly, but there's a difference in the way that he has to deal with a plague, because there are so many of these plagues that happen. It's almost like a lower effort thing for him to do. Like earlier, I think in Korach, there's somebody has to run around and bring incense to a certain place to stop a plague. And here, all he has to do is just make a brass snake and hold it up, and people just look at it, and the plague goes away. But it is interesting that he's definitely tired, and he's definitely coming to the end of his story. There are some interesting parallels, speaking of that, with the golden calf. And I think I actually was reading something that draw parallels between the golden snake and the golden calf, where it's almost like before, if these are the children of the people who made the golden calf, it's like they have to mirror that action in some way. And they're creating some graven image for a good purpose in order to save themselves, as opposed to the people who made the golden calf, who brought all their gold and melted it down and made it for a bad purpose.
So this pole was gold, or just pole? It doesn't say
brass. This is a brass snake, yeah.
Brass pole.
Compared to a golden calf, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is why there's so many contradictions, in this story. You'll not make any graven image, and then the only way to save yourself is to make a graven image. Mm-hmm. So that's hard to to understand. Is it a sin to do it? Is it? But if God says, the question is if God tells you to sin, are you supposed to sin? If God told Moshe, Yehovah told Moshe.
That's
to do
okay.
something.
When we're talking about it, we slip into these kind of signs.
Yeah. So this whole idea of what actions you're supposed to take to refrain from having other deities is really difficult, because in those days they really loved deities. The more the better. So maybe they probably got relief just from seeing this pole.
Yeah.
And just the relief itself. I don't know. They really got the rocks off with this avodah zaras. They really, really, really needed.
They really did. Yeah.
And it may, perhaps this is what the only cure was. They needed to have this. It's like a fix. They needed to have their fix of their avodah zara. Otherwise it's really strange. Why would they need to look at an image altar? Why couldn't they just? Listen. God, Jehovah just did all these miracles, without any imagery. Why did they have to have this pole? So I see that. So you're saying it's mirroring the golden calf, in which Ahron was, I think that he was the culprit, or he was definitely.
Right, and this time Eleazar, his son, is the leader of it.
And Moshe wasn't present for any of this. Apparently, he was up in the cloud, and he didn't see the whole nation creating this calf, and he was pretty frustrated and came down, and he again smashed the item in question, which was the tablets.
Yeah.
He smashed them, broke them out of frustration. He seemed to be kind of have a temper. Moshe was kind of had a temper. He really did.
Bit, yeah.
I mean, why smash the tablets? Just wait,
Well, there's that guy that he hit in Mitzrayim too.
Yeah, the first thing we see in his career, he's hitting people.
Killed a guy.
He did grow up kind of like in a rough neighborhood, He grew up pretty rough, just like floating in the sea in a basket. He grew up in like pretty rough neighborhood, but he gets frustrated and he has hot temper a lot.
Oh yeah, just like God.
Right.
They kind of go together. Yeah.
They kind of go together. That's why they're bros.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, what was I going to say? Do you have any other final thoughts on this, or does this bring up anything else for you?
I mean, it's the plot. It's kind of like you were saying. It's coming to an end. They're in the desert, and then so the chronology is a little bit off. I guess they get out of the desert, and then it's the chronology of the Torah. It's not really like written like a pure history,
Right.
So I don't know exactly where it's going to jump off in the next few readings, but I think then it goes back to more laws after this.
So I think what happens is it goes. So what happens in I'm probably going to edit this out, but what happens in, because I want to like really expound on it when we get to it. What happens in Devarim is essentially they're prepared to go into the land, and Moshe is like, all right, listen, this is everything that's happened up until this point. So he repeats a lot of this stuff. So that's why there's a redoing of all the stories. It's him retelling the story to this generation that didn't experience it.
Well, so the thing about this part that really comes to mind is that the violence, and it's so it almost sets it up. There's going to be violence. There's going to be corpses. There's going to be dead people. How do you deal with it? You take this red cow. Where do you get a red cow? It's rare. Sorry. I don't know. You're all going to be defiled and impure for your whole life. And that's part of the story of how we are today. There's half of these readings, I'm sure it's been hard to set these up because they're really obscure laws about purity and sacrifice. And I don't know if you did, who read with you during Vayikra, but we're in that book now that we were reading. And yesterday I was reading it in the synagogue, and I had a really, really rough time because these words are very strange, and it's all about purifying, what not to touch, dead animals.
Different
I don't know how
objects
I'd
and
love
materials,
to hear those because what did people go through to purify themselves, and I feel like I have the same thing now where we have this idea of like what it means to be like a pure soul or like purity, and like I think a lot of these images come from these narratives, how to purify yourself, how can you be totally pure. I mean, we're obsessed with it, looking at this water, and it's obviously it's in plastic, I'm sure it's so super pure, but the idea of like purity, it really eludes us. It's almost like it's impossible to like be 100% pure, and it's impossible to find a 100% red calf.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too is you're bringing up the idea of violence and purity. Like it is almost preparing them for war. It's almost like before you go off and fight people and start taking land, you need to know how to do it in a pure way and purify yourself after you touch a dead body, because you're about to be killing a whole lot of people, and you have to know how to, you're going to commit genocide and kill an entire nation. But you have to do it in a pure way. And when you're done, you're going to take this red calf, that kind of symbolic, irrational symbol of purity, and that's how you're going to wipe away all the yuckiness of war.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of dangerous when people you apply this story to like today and their own efforts in fighting wars, because they're just like, hey, listen, this is what we do. We fight wars. And then we do some magical practice, and we're all clean again.
Right, because there's no way to really get rid of the evil that is fighting.
But then the contradiction is inherent. Like, you're not supposed to kill a person.
Yeah.
But it seems to be there are some times where if you got to get through the country, you got to get through the country. Sometimes.
If they don't let you go through.
Yeah, so that's hard for me to relate to.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how they don't fight with Edom, right? Because that's family.
What do they do? They'd make a compromise with
Edom?
Edom?
No, Edom tells them they can't go through, and they just don't.
They just don't.
Go somewhere else.
They take a better route. Is it because they're family or because he's too mighty?
I think I guess it depends on how charitable you want to be with your reading. I immediately thought, oh, it's because they're family, but it could also be because they felt like they couldn't win. But then, if they have Jehovah on their side, then they have to be able to win.
Edom was always the strong nation.
But then again, it's family, so maybe Jehovah doesn't necessarily want to pit brother against brother in this war.
Yeah, or really, they're closely related.
Yeah. So we're going to close up. Was there anything that you wanted to plug? Anywhere people can check you out online? Anything you want people to follow?
You mean the internet?
Yeah, the internet.
Well, I do post pretty regularly on my Instagram. If you wanted to continue this biblical narrative, it's my Instagram is Floating Heads Hair. I know it sounds. Dave's laughing because it's a funny name, but it's Floating Heads Hair, and that's where I talk about the Parsha.
Yeah, I think there's some really beautiful images. I think there's a really interesting aesthetic to it, and there's a nice juxtaposition between ritualistic objects, between kind of religious seeming imagery and non-religious seeming imagery, and raises questions about what is religious and what isn't. That's what it does for me, at least. As always, you can check out the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, website, but also seriously listen to it on iTunes, Stitcher, all podcasts app. Rate and review it. A good way to share the podcast, other than just telling people about it, is to download an episode, put it on an old AOL disc, and mail it to your congressman and see if they think that it's AOL. And then when they put it in, they'll find out that it's actually a podcast. So do that. That's it for our show. Make sure to join us. Tune in again next time, because next week in the Bible,
Balaam got super mad and smacked that ass with his rod. I feel like that is a long lost rap song.
Smack that ass with your rod.
It's like the other version.
The talking donkey rap.
Yep.